Good morning, everyone. My name is Heather Kinsey, and I'm joining you from Anchorage, Alaska. I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Strive Group. Welcome to our daily webinars. Today, our guest is Karen Kirk from Synergistic Solutions. Karen's joining us from Eagle River, Alaska. So if you're not from Alaska, just know that's a little bit north of us. I've known Karen for years, and I appreciate her giving us her time and talents here today. But before I turn over the reins to her, I just wanted to do a little housekeeping, and then I will pop out. So the housekeeping goes as this. Karen is on today. She's going to talk about working productively from home. Tomorrow's topic will cover an update on employee benefits, specifically the employee, based on the stimulus packages that are coming out of Washington, D.C., how that might affect employer, employee, and wellness benefits. Monday's session will be on the Paycheck Protection Program. This is getting a lot of attention, for lack of a better phrase, in the news and on social media. It's a really, really good idea that has had some hiccups, and so we're going to get a great update about the PPP from our own state director for Small Business Development Center, John Bittner. He will be joining us on Monday. If you have any ideas for topics for future programming, feel free to email them at info@thestrivegroup.com. If you're joining us live today, you'll notice on the right-hand side of your screen is a chat function. Those chats come directly to me. They are not seen by others. Feel free to just type in a question that you may have for Karen. What I'll do is I'll jump back onto the webinar to alert Karen that there's a question. She'll answer that question, and then we'll just continue on with the 30-minute program. So without further ado, I'll leave it to Karen to introduce herself just briefly and then dive in to some content regarding working productively at home. Thank you, Karen, for joining us.
Thank you, Heather. Good morning, everyone. So as Heather noted, today we're going to be looking at how to be more effective working from home. A lot of us have probably been working from home at least for the past 3 or 4 weeks now. And some of us may have been challenged with working too little because of too many distractions, or maybe even working too much because we don't have a clear stop point. And I appreciate those challenges because I myself have been working out of a home office for about 20 years now. So today we're going to look at some tips to help us maybe readjust a bit and increase our productivity and effectiveness. Because during this time of stay puts and resulting reductions in staffing, it's very important to remain relevant and productive. So that is the focus of what we're going to be looking at today. This morning, we're going to set up by looking at 3 specific areas. 1, how to set up and prepare our workspace. 2, how to be effective within our workday. And 3, how to stay connected. Quick side note, I do make a lot of gestures because my hands are connected to my brain. I realize that my webcam is probably about a moderate level, maybe even lower level quality. Therefore, some of my gestures look blurry, so I apologize for that. I do my best to keep them below the monitor, but sometimes they pop up, and I know that can be very distracting. So to start off with, how can we be more effective in setting up and preparing for working at home? So this is actually the previous slide that we had, so we could pop back to that previous slide. That'd be fantastic. So looking at, first of all, a dedicated workspace for our work. If you have an in-home office, great. You can nap for the next 3 or 4 minutes. But if you don't have an in-home office, we have to figure out, how can we be more creative? Maybe there's a separate alcove in the home. Maybe there is an end of a hallway. Maybe you have an entryway. If you have an entryway, the probability is you have very little to no visitors right now, and entryways tend to be pulled away from the main living area of the home and actually create a very nice dedicated office space there. So you could use that. You might be able to use furniture to partition off a part of the home to create a dedicated office space. 2 areas I would strongly stay away from are a breakfast bar or a rest area like a bedroom. Why do we want to do that? Why do we want to separate a dedicated workspace? Because it helps us to create the focus that is necessary to be productive for about 8 hours in a space that normally is dedicated for different types of things in our home. Two, we want to take a look at, do we have the organization necessary, the equipment necessary to work effectively in that space? Obviously, you'll want a desk or some kind of a card table. You'll want your computer, laptop, phone, files, whatever it is that you need. Internet connectivity clearly is a strong issue. All the kinds of things that you can think about that would help you be more focused in that workspace. You do want to keep it neat. Visually, that's very helpful. If you have a physical workspace that is fairly neat, that helps you mentally focus a little bit better. And last of all, I would strongly suggest, if you can, try to acquire the best type of office chair that you have, since you'll be sitting in it for quite some time. You need good lumbar support, and you need good hip and knee alignment, meaning your hip needs to be straight across from that knee. Yes, Heather?
With questions come in, Karen, about background. What are your opinions or suggestions on appropriate backgrounds that aren't distracting?
Backgrounds within an office space, and that may or may not be something that you can manage. If you're looking at background for a home office, I would actually minimize it as best that you can. Oddly enough, in the workspace, in an office, we try to bring in things to personalize it, right? We bring in pictures and photos and things that we can do to make it seem more personal. You're going to want to do the opposite in your workspace at home. You're going to want to take out as many things as you can to make it more neutral for the workspace. So my best suggestion for that is do the opposite of what you would do in a live workspace away from home. When you're in a home workspace, you want to take a look at, if you have a lot of personal effects around, I would actually look at just putting them away in a box or off to a side somewhere, because they tend to tell your brain and your mindset that you're in a personal space as opposed to a workspace. So that's actually a really good question. So second thought on preparing for our workspace is parameters. Really important to do this. Establishing parameters for yourself and establishing parameters for others that you might be sharing this workspace with. Important to identify distractions for yourself. What are distractions throughout the workday? Are they noise related? Are they coming from kiddos that you're sharing the space with, from other individuals that may be working at home as well, from pets? Identify the things that distract you. One list. On the second list, take a look at how can you address each of those distractions. You may not be able to eliminate them, but maybe you can minimize them. Can you use noise canceling headphones? If not, at least earplugs. Can you establish parameters with people that are sharing your space? Identify break times. Really important to do this. I just have a quick thought or a quick question that happens numerous times through our workday can really eat up a lot of time. People coming in and just asking quick thoughts, quick things can eat up hours of productivity time. So in advance, addressing with the entire individuals that are in your household and in your workspace to let them know, so I'm going to be at work until about 10. I have a 15-minute break then I will be back at work until 12, at which point I'll have maybe 45 minutes to an hour to see how all of us can best accommodate each other. Third point under preparing for success is enclothed cognition. This is an actual term, and it means the effect that clothes have on our attitudes, our emotions, and our interpersonal interactions. It basically means for us in the workspace, no pajama pants. We want to dress for the workday, a casual workday. You don't have to wear a suit, but our brains are very impacted by what we wear. We want to match what we're wearing for the occasion. Our suit might feel very appropriate in an office, but you might notice if you ever go to a club after you're in the office that you feel odd walking through the club in your suit, right? Another example is external uniforms that police, fire, and medical professionals wear. This helps individuals increase the consciousness of their internal duties. You might notice at the end of a workday, you like to put on comfy clothes because that helps your mindset download just a little bit. And you might notice that on the weekends you put on workout gear because the probability, if you have it on, is higher that you will actually work out. Bottom line is, enclothed cognition is about the impact that clothes have on your mindset. No pajama pants. Next section. Yes, Heather.
Sorry, just popping in with two observations, one from me, one from a viewer. The first one is they thank you for the examples that you offered about enclothed cognition. One, it's a funky term, and two, I totally get it, and I'm sure that the viewer, whether it's a him or a her, I'm sure that they do too. It's like, oh, that's right. And the example of the police or people in uniform, it affects our cognition of them too, right? They're more formal. They've got a tad bit of authority. Why? Because they are wearing a uniform of some sort. And I think that's super important. I know that I've worked from home just like you for years and years, back when I was a sole proprietor. And the days that I dressed for work, even if I didn't see a client, I felt I was more acutely focused during that. And so I totally appreciate that. But the other observation was back to establishing parameters. And perhaps there's a little bit of a question in there. I like the idea of letting your kids, right? Because many of us are at home working and we've got children, whether they're teenagers or younger, or even maybe college age, that we're sharing comfortable workspace, or school workspace. I like the idea of parameters, for that shared space. Do you find that that's not only helpful to manage the 8-hour or the 10-hour workday, but do you find that that also helps with our cognitive ability to compartmentalize work from personal life? And I'll let you answer that, and then of course go on to your next subject.
Yeah, and I think the answer is within the question. Yes, I do think that helps immensely, because one of the biggest, well, I would say the biggest challenge at working from home is distractions. And the type of distractions that you have working from home tend to be aligned with your values, right? If you hold family as a high value, it's easy for that to be considered a significant and maybe even necessary distraction. So yes, it's very important to establish those parameters if you can. I've told my boys when they were little, if it's bleeding, let me know. But other than that, we can wait for a break, which is fine. They were all cued into that really well. And just as a side note, although I am known for making up words to best fit what I'm looking for, I did not make up enclothed cognition. It is actually a term that came up, I think, about 2 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago, not that long ago. So for individuals that are interested, they could just plop it into Google and you'll see the resulting definition there. So moving on to how can we then, once we've set up our workspace, how can we be more effective in our workday, taking those concepts that we just talked about, the 3 concepts, into our workday. So 5 points here. First, most important, establish a schedule, establish a routine, your hours of operation, if you will. It might be similar to when you were in the office space, or you might adjust them a bit due to the current situation because of personal commitments that you have. For example, parent-teacher kiddo meetings. The key is for consistent start day and end day. Consistency, super important to do that. Identify when your breaks will be. Identify a morning break for say 10 to 15 minutes, identify your lunch time, identify an afternoon break. That not only helps you, it helps other individuals, co-parents, kiddos that are sharing your space get used to that routine. It'll be very important for them as well as for you. I would strongly suggest that during those breaks, you move away from the workspace and do non-related work. That's the point of the break, right? Whether you're getting a snack, maybe taking a quick walk, listening to music. You can even do a quick household chore, although you'll note that I'll comment on that later. Some of us can get pulled into household chores and they end up taking half an hour. So if that's you, I wouldn't suggest that. But I want to make sure that we do something that is non-work related so that when we come back to work, we feel a little bit more refreshed. That's the point of the break. 2, personal discipline. Really important, right? We want to take a look at 2 things. 1, what is the focus that we need to work? How can we identify that? What is the necessary focus we need? For example, what are things that we need to do and what are things that we need not to do? Maybe on the list of things not to do is staying off of social media, not doing web surfing, maybe not doing household chores for us because maybe that eats up more than just a break time. Physical reminders are very helpful. So for things that we want to make sure not to do, we want to put them out of our line of sight. If we cannot do that, even putting a note reminder, don't do during your workday. The opposite is true of things that we want to be focusing on, things that we want to do. We want to put them in our line of sight. And or a note reminder, these are the things that we need to be focusing on. The brain tends to connect with that which is in front of us, right? I've mentioned that in a previous session, that if we know this is true because when we want to remember to take something with us to the car, we have a tendency to put it by the door because that visual reminder helps. So when we want to make sure that distractions don't distract us, we want to move them out of our line of sight. 2, can we identify higher productivity times for certain types of work? Now, for some of us, we may respond better to emails in the morning. Some of us respond better to emails in the evening. So identifying certain times of day that are better for certain kinds of activities. What time of day is good for us to respond to emails? What time of day is good for us to start and dive into a writing project or a research project? So identifying higher productivity times for certain types of work can be very helpful. Next point, transition in, transition out. This I mentioned in a previous session a couple weeks ago. Because we don't have the drive to work anymore, to mentally cue our brains, to trigger our brain that we're moving into work. We used to have a routine and a habit. Get up, take a shower, get dressed, put things in a briefcase or some kind of a carry bag, drive to work. And that routine occurred every single day. That helped our brains click over from the personal mode into the professional mode. We don't have that now. So you have to have some kind of a routine that clicks your brain from the personal mode into the professional mode. It could be simple. Get up, get dressed for the workday, put on instrumental music, you might do some stretching, you might make coffee, you might arrange your workspace. As a side note, I've had a client recently talk to me about that because they had so many years at work in an office space surrounded by other people, that the quietness of the home was actually very distracting. They did not have other individuals in the home with them at this time. So we were talking about putting on, even like turning on the TV on the History Channel and turning it down low to a dull murmur ended up being actually very helpful. Sometimes the simplest suggestions can create a really big impact. And likewise, transitioning out. We don't have the drive home to signal our brain that our workday is done. So we want to create a routine, close out work tabs, reorganize the space, set it up for the next day, change our clothes into something more comfortable, take the dog for a walk, do some routine that transitions our brain, done for the day. Important to do that. 4th point, staying on task. Now, part of this is a carryover from our first section. If you recall in the preparation section, we were talking about identifying what our distractions are and then addressing each of them in advance. Very important to do that. List what distracts us, identify how to address, because they can pull us off task. 2, identify expectations from our own management. What tasks and projects need to be accomplished? What are the due dates? what are check-ins, and what is expected at each check-in. And we're going to use that to create our own daily and or weekly to-do lists. Again, a point, very important to remain productive and relevant with measurable outcomes during this time. You don't want to, at the end of this process, have your management take a look at what it is you've produced and find that it's a little lacking, find that maybe your usefulness back in the office is not as efficient as they thought it once could be. It's very obvious when we are at a working from home environment how productive we are and how relevant we are. Can't stress that enough. Fifth point, proactive planning. We don't have an end date right now. Yes, Heather.
I'm sorry that I'm interrupting, but there's rapid fire questions and observations coming on. And so I wanted to, before you lost the train of thought, I wanted to interrupt. I do apologize, Karen. The first one was an observation, and I'm just going to go ahead and read it to everybody because I don't want to misspeak. When attempting to stay focused and on task, a great physical cue is writing down the tasks and goals on a piece of paper. There is something deliberate about this, and it reinforces what needs to be done for the day or the week. And I think what you have offered validates this viewer's point. The second, and that guest name was Jeff, by the way. So thank you, Jeff, for that observation. The next one is a question, and you may have answered it, but I think you answered it in a physical way, not necessarily a mental way. And that was your transition in and transition out. Just prior to you getting to that bullet, Karen, a question came in that says, are there any recommendations for mentally preparing yourself to go into work, right? We're not driving there. We're not saying hello to our colleagues and getting our coffee and heading off to our cubicle. So what were some recommendations for some mental prep for that? You discussed it physically, but are there any mental activities, maybe a quick meditation or a quick mindfulness moment that you can talk about before you address this last thing on your slide, proactive planning?
Really good point. And I appreciate Jeff's comment as well. I wholeheartedly agree with it. By the way, I love interruptions. So I do tend to go on, but I don't mind interruptions at all. I can only tell you based off of my experience and my clients' experience, I have found that the physical things that you do cue the mental framing mindset. So first, I do believe that those are very connected. Two, if you find that you need that additional piece, I think one of the points that we were looking at earlier, which is reviewing that which your to-do list for the day, just doing a quick overview for that, I find that incredibly helpful. I have what I call a daily mindful moment that I do. That sounds so professional. I'm not sure if it really feels that way when I'm doing it, but I'm taking a look at basically my to-do list for the day. And I do that at the beginning of every day and also at the end of every day because there's certain items that for sure have to be done. And that definitely helps me get my brain queued up. So I'm literally looking at my schedule for the day. Now I build that the night before. That's part of my closeout from the previous day in entry into the next day. So hopefully that may help just a bit. So the last point that we have under our how to be effective during the workday is this proactive planning piece. And this is just an add-on because of the situation that we're in. Because we don't have an end date to this stay put, and we don't know if it will be reinstituted at a further date, it causes us to be in this continual reactive mode, which is really hard on our brains and on our psyches. So I think it's important to take a moment, maybe once a week or so, to plan ahead. What do I need to be doing today if I'm still here next month? And or I have to come back to doing this 3 or 4 months from now. There's a great quote that says, planning for possibilities today helps take the shock and surprise out of tomorrow's reality. Love that. I didn't make it up, just found it. It's fantastic. So last point as we are nearing the close of this piece is staying connected. 2 simple points. 1, check-ins. do make sure and check in with team members at least once a week so that you avoid that isolation bubble that can occur. And two, obviously checking in with your manager or whoever it is that you report to weekly or bi-weekly to review progress. I wouldn't pause on that and wait for that individual to reach out. If they are not doing so, you do need to make sure and have those connections. Because of this electronic environment that we're in right now, the tool that I would suggest that you use is one that we are using right now, this virtual conference mode, or at very minimum, the phone. And last of all, virtual meetings. We do have a previous recording on the Strive website that notes virtual meeting management, and Strive also has a very helpful bullet point list of when you're in virtual meetings, a quick overview of protocol. So overall, I'd suggest you follow protocol. However, if your meeting doesn't have protocol and that isn't listed by the facilitator, at least 5 things. 1, stop your work 15 minutes before that virtual meeting. 2, check for potential background distractions. You might even want to put up a sign near your workspace indicating that you're going to be in a virtual conference. 3, review the objective of the meeting and identify what you will be contributing, how you will be participating. 4, log into the meeting at least 5 minutes prior to. That's considered on time. If the meeting is at 10, log in at 9:55. And last of all, of course, remember to mute until you speak and mute after you speak. Last 2 points. There's 2 keys for a healthy work from home psyche. 1, go outside. This is extremely important after having been inside all day. Human beings are biological beings. We have a life cycle. We have a birth, a maturation process, a decline, and a passing. We are just like a tree. We have nothing in common with the inanimate objects that are inside our homes. That's why it is physiologically healthy for us to go outside. We have much more in common with the tree, they have a life cycle too, than we do with a laptop. Very important to do that. We need fresh air. We need that sense of groundedness. 2, get exercise. There's a number of online classes that are available in various different formats right now. You could even combine outside and exercise by going outside for a walk, a run, a bike, a hike. Anything that you do with those 2 areas will dramatically improve your work from home psyche. If you're thinking those sound shallow and probably not that critical and won't make that much of a difference, if you haven't tried either one, I strongly suggest you try one and then see how you feel at the end of that. So I know we only have about 3 minutes left, but I want to pop back in with Heather and just see if you have any additional tips or thoughts with regards to working from home.
Well, I got to tell you, Karen, I am going to remind myself that I have more in common with a tree than I do with my laptop. There are reasons why I love you, and that is one of them. That is just one of the many reasons. And so the question that we have is, there's a tad bit of sarcasm in it, so just bear with me here, but it says, yeah, we have to exercise. But what good is 10 minutes going to give me? So maybe
so I can answer that. So let me just help you with that. So I've been a fitness instructor for, I think, oh my God, it's going to date me, about 35 years now. 10 minutes will make a massive difference because 10 minutes a day added up over a week, added up over a month, added up over a year makes a huge difference. People, the human species is a biological, physiological species. We have to move. We were not built to sit for 8 hours a day. So yes, 10 minutes will make a huge difference. Huge difference. And I could go into all the physiological reasons, but all I'm going to say is do it for a week, then tell me how you feel.
Right. Well, maybe that should be our next webinar with you, Karen, is 30 minutes of tips and tricks on how to exercise in 10 minutes or less or whatever.
We can do that.
I can see it now. Anyway, well, we have come to a close, and I appreciate all of the viewers that joined us live today. I appreciate all of the viewers that are watching us in a recording later on when it's more convenient for them. Just a little bit of housekeeping, and then I'll turn it over to Karen to say her goodbyes. You can watch this on playback. We'll post it to our website in about 5 minutes. That website is thestrivegroup.com. You'll also see out on that website, if you select the COVID-19 resources, you'll see all of our future programming. But you may not see a topic that interests you, and you may be dying to learn about, I don't know, 10 minutes of exercise in your home or less, or whatever. I don't care what you want to learn about. But if you have an idea for a 30-minute topic, then just shoot me your idea or your suggestion at info@thestrivegroup.com. If I have an expert that can address that subject, I'll just schedule them and we'll put them into our programming. If you have a suggestion on who that expert might be, then just let me know. Let me know. I'll reach out to that person. You won't have to. Just I'll reach out to them and ask them if they'd like to be our guest, and or maybe they'll have another resource for us. It doesn't matter. I am pretty darn resourceful, and I will do my best to get it onto programming so you can have a webinar built specifically for you. So please do not hesitate to drop me a line at info@thestrivegroup.com. I'll say my goodbyes. I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thursday. Our week is nearly ended. I know they seem to be lasting a lot longer than they should, but nonetheless, it's Thursday. We made it this far. I hope you're all staying healthy and keeping your distance, not isolated. I hope you're washing your hands. I hope you have plenty of sanitizer, all of that good stuff. I wish you all the best. And Karen, I cannot thank you enough for giving us your time and your talent and your humor yet again. I look forward to another webinar with you. Everybody that's watching, here's some information on Karen, but I'll let her go ahead and speak for herself. Feel free to contact her directly. All of our guests, they're not afraid of your emails. So her email is down there in the lower right-hand side. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you for all of you that chose to join today, and also for your questions and comments. I very much appreciate them. As Heather noted, I'll just tag on to it to please hang in there, continue to look for ways to be productive and relevant during this time, and take care.